It feels like, like the second you finally kind of figure out the internet, the rules change. Like right when you get comfortable, bam, there's a new way for those bad guys to get into your stuff.
It's true, yeah. And that's what makes it so tough to wrap your head around.
Right. I mean, it's exhausting. Always feels like you're playing catch up, always on defense.
That is a perfect analogy, actually. You hit the nail on the head there. It's that relentless feeling that can be so overwhelming when it comes to, cybersecurity. And that feeling is exactly why this show exists.
It is. Welcome to Kong Coding, everybody, our weekly deep dive into the world of cybersecurity. And, well, this week we've been raiding through a ton of recent news, headlines, reports.
A lot to cover.
Yeah, we picked out the stories that we think really matter, the stuff that's going to directly impact you. And our goal here, to break it all down in plain English. No jargon, no tech overload, just the essential stuff you need to know.
We want this to be your shortcut to staying ahead of the curve. We're going to look beyond just those scary headlines. We're going to try to understand what these events actually mean for your security. Like, what are the takeaways? What do you actually need to do to stay safe?
One of the biggest trends we keep seeing, like in almost every article, is the rise of AI in cybersecurity. And, well, as you can imagine, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's not just the good guys using it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, companies like Microsoft are rolling out all these new AI-powered tools, like their Security Copilot Agents.
I read about those, yeah.
Yeah, these things are designed to kind of automate some really critical security tasks, like data protection, figuring out who has access to what on your network, and even combating those annoying phishing attempts we all hate.
Okay, so here's where it gets interesting, and this really caught my eye. Vasu Jackal, she's the global head of security over at Microsoft, right? She said something that really made me think. She pointed out that AI isn't just helping us defend against these cyber attacks. It's actually like making them even more powerful and easier to pull off.
Right. It's lowering the bar for entry, essentially. You don't need to be some kind of super hacker to launch a sophisticated attack these days.
So cybercrime is getting democratized. That's kind of terrifying, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it feeds into this cycle, right? Jackal talked about how we're dealing with this constantly changing threat landscape. The attacks are getting more sophisticated all the time. At the same time, managing your security has become so complex. You've got so many devices, so many systems, so much data. And then on top of all that, there's just not enough people who know how to do cybersecurity well.
Oh, yeah. The talent gap is huge, right? Like finding skilled cybersecurity professionals is tough.
Yeah, it is. So you can see why the promise of AI on the defense is so appealing, right?
Totally. So Microsoft's pushing out 11 new Copilot agents. They all focus on different things, like stopping threats before they even hit you, locking down your data, managing all those devices you have, phones, laptops, everything, controlling who gets into your systems, and even gathering intelligence on emerging threats. And they're partnering with, I think it's 5 other companies to roll out even more of these agentic solutions or whatever they're calling them. Those help with like responding to those privacy breaches if they do happen and sorting through all the security alerts that pop up every day.
Right. So if you think about it, what they're trying to do is give security teams, superpowers. That's how they're pitching it. I mean, the amount of security data that's generated every day is mind-boggling. There's no way any human team could handle it.
It's overwhelming. Microsoft says they're processing like 84 trillion security signals, whatever those are, every single day. Plus, they're seeing 7,000 password attacks every second.
Yeah, that's the scale of the problem here. It's massive.
So how on earth do you even make sense of all that data and stop all those attacks?
Yeah. Well, that's the promise these agents offer. They can, as Jackal put it, act like another pair of eyes and pair of hands. Think about phishing emails, for example. We saw 30 billion of those just last year. Imagine trying to manually investigate every single one.
Oh, I'd quit.
Haha, right. It's impossible. But an AI-powered phishing agent can sift through all those alerts, filter out the harmless ones, and then flag the really dangerous ones for a human to check out. It's like having an army of digital assistants working around the clock.
Makes sense. It's like that saying, work smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly. And Jackal made a really good point, too. She said that if defenders want to survive in this cat and mouse game with cyber criminals, they have to use AI.
Yeah, they have to keep up with the times.
Because remember, there just aren't enough cybersecurity experts out there to do it all manually. And don't forget the big motivator behind all this, money. Global cybercrime is a huge business. We're talking trillions of dollars. Jackal quoted a figure, I think it was 9.2 trillion USD annually, and that number is only going to grow.
It's crazy. So basically, these attacks are going to keep coming, right?
Yeah, the money is just too good. And the smaller businesses, the ones that maybe don't have their own security team, they're the most vulnerable.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel for the hackers, right?
In some cases, yeah, unfortunately. So moving on, another really big trend that we saw a lot of is the surge in ransomware attacks. It feels like every other day another organization is getting hit and their data is getting held hostage.
Scary stuff, right?
Mm.
I mean, what do you even do if you get hit with ransomware?
Well, we'll talk about that in a bit, but first, yeah, you're right. The numbers are pretty alarming. Nordstellar, they're a cybersecurity firm, reported an 81% year-on-year increase in ransomware attacks just in 2025. That's a huge jump.
81%. Wow. That's not a good sign. So who are the main culprits behind all this?
Well, a big one, and they've been making a lot of headlines, is this group called Cl0p. They've claimed responsibility for something like 385 attacks already this year, and it's only March.
They're busy.
They are. And February 2025 was a record-breaking month for them. It saw the highest number of ransomware attacks ever recorded in a single month. 980 attacks, which averages out to about 35 attacks every single day.
That's insane. So Cl0p, for those who don't know, fill us in. Who are they?
So they've been around for a while, since about 2019, and they operate on what's called a ransomware as a service model. Think of it like they're the mob boss who provides the guns and the getaway car to other criminals who want to pull off a heist. Cl0p really gained notoriety after that movie Managed File Transfer Breach. You remember that one? It impacted hundreds of organizations.
Oh, yeah. Millions of people had their data stolen, right?
Yeah, over 40 million. And another interesting trend we noticed is how many U.S. organizations are being targeted. Nordstellar's data shows that out of 2,040 ransomware victims, 844 of them were in the United States.
So they're going after the big fish, huh? Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
The U.S. has more money.
That's probably part of it, yeah. Vikas Nareka, he's a cybersecurity expert over at Nordstellar. He thinks it's because U.S. companies are seen as more lucrative targets. They've got more money, they're more likely to have cyber insurance, and their networks are super interconnected, so it's easier for the ransomware to spread once it's in.
So it's like a perfect storm for ransomware attacks.
Pretty much, yeah. And Noreka also pointed out a few things that are driving this surge. He mentioned the faster exploitation of what are called zero-day vulnerabilities. Those are like hidden flaws in software that even the developers don't know about yet, so there's no patch available, which makes them super dangerous.
It's like a ticking time bomb waiting to go off.
Exactly. And then there's the whole RAS model, which makes it so much easier for less skilled criminals to launch these attacks. And then on top of all that, a lot of organizations are still struggling with basic cybersecurity hygiene, like not keeping their systems updated with the latest patches, using weak passwords, stuff like that.
Yeah, the basics are still so important, but it seems like people just forget about them.
They do, and that's what makes them vulnerable. And we should also mention Cl0p's recent activity. It actually builds on their past successes. Noreka specifically pointed to their history of exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in file transfer software, like Clio and, of course, Uvia. These guys clearly know what they're doing.
So what can we do about it? I mean, this all sounds pretty bleak. How do you even protect yourself from these ransomware attacks?
Well, Nordstellar had some good advice. They really stressed the importance of a multi-layered cybersecurity strategy. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. So not just relying on antivirus software or whatever.
Exactly. And regularly backing up your data so you can restore it if you do get hit. That's absolutely crucial. And then, of course, enable multi-factor authentication on all your accounts. That's like having a second lock on your digital door.
Double the protection. Makes sense. What else?
They also recommend monitoring the dark web for any compromised credentials. That way, you can change your passwords before the hackers can use them. And regular cybersecurity training for your employees so they know how to spot phishing attempts and other threats. And then finally, make sure you have strong endpoint protection systems installed on all your devices.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of it comes down to just being smart and proactive.
It does, yeah. A lot of this stuff isn't rocket science, but it does require vigilance and, consistent effort. The fact that groups like Cl0p are still so successful shows that a lot of organizations aren't doing these basic things well enough.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about nation-state actors. We saw a report about this scary cyber espionage campaign that's been linked to a Chinese state-sponsored group.
Oh, yeah, the Weaver Ant group. Researchers at Signia uncovered that one. It's pretty unsettling. They were inside the network of a major telecom provider in Asia for 4 years, completely undetected.
4 years. That's a long time to go unnoticed. So how did they even discover this? I mean, were they looking for it?
No, they were actually investigating a completely different security incident. And during that investigation, they started noticing all these weird alerts, like an account that had been disabled suddenly got reactivated. That raised a red flag, and they started digging deeper.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And what did they find? Was it just espionage or something more sinister?
Well, they found what are known as China Chopper web shells. Basically, those are secret backdoors that let the attackers control the web server remotely. They also found other malicious programs that were designed for something called lateral movement. That's where they hop from one compromised computer to another within the network, kind of like a burglar going from room to room in a house. And they also found tools for exfiltrating data, stealing it from the network.
Okay, so classic espionage tactics then. But how did they even get in the first place?
Through vulnerable Zixel routers, apparently. And it wasn't just that one telecom provider. Other providers in Southeast Asia were also affected because they were using the same compromised routers.
So one vulnerability can have a ripple effect across multiple organizations.
Exactly. And what's really remarkable about Weaver Ant is that they managed to stay hidden for so long. Even when the telecom provider tried to kick them out, they adapted their methods to stay in the network and keep collecting sensitive information. They were very persistent and very good at what they did.
It's pretty chilling when you think about it.
Yeah.
And the expert from Signia, what's his name? Oren Biderman. He said that nation-state actors like Weaver Ant are incredibly dangerous and persistent. Their goal is to get into critical infrastructure, like power grids, telecom networks, that kind of stuff, all to gather intelligence and potentially disrupt those systems if they need to.
Right. It's all about gaining an advantage strategically and tactically. And the fact that they went undetected for 4 years, that's a testament to their skill and the challenges that defenders face. It's an uphill battle.
It is, yeah. Okay, so moving on, we saw this other story about a supply chain attack that targeted GitHub. And apparently Coinbase, the cryptocurrency exchange, was the main target.
Oh yeah, that was a sophisticated attack. And while Coinbase wasn't actually breached, hundreds of other software projects were affected, kind of like collateral damage. Something like 218 repositories were compromised, according to the reports.
Wow, so this wasn't just a small-scale attack.
No, it's pretty widespread. So what happened was the attackers started by messing with this seemingly minor tool on GitHub called review.actions setup at V1. It's a tool that helps automate certain tasks in software development projects.
Okay, so a pretty commonly used tool.
Right, and we're not exactly sure how they did it, but the attackers managed to make this tool leak sensitive access codes into public logs.
Okay, and then they use those codes to get into Coinbase.
Exactly. They use those codes to inject malicious code into another popular tool called TJ Actions Changed Files. Now, this tool is used by Coinbase in their development process, so the attackers were hoping to use this access to sneak into Coinbase's main code repository, get deeper into their systems, and potentially cause some serious damage.
So they were trying to hit them where it hurts, huh?
Yeah.
Their code base.
Yeah, it seems so. There's even a report that they managed to get a special digital key, a GitHub token, that gave them write permissions to Coinbase's AgentKit software area just before the main attack. That could have been really bad.
Yeah, it sounds like a close call.
It was. Luckily, Coinbase confirmed that the attack failed and they didn't lose any data or money. But here's the thing. After they failed to break into Coinbase, the attackers shifted their focus to other projects that were using those same compromised tools. So who knows how much damage they were able to do elsewhere.
Right. So even if you dodge the bullet, someone else might not be so lucky.
Exactly. This whole incident really highlights the danger of these supply chain attacks. One vulnerability in a seemingly insignificant tool can have massive repercussions across the entire software ecosystem.
It's all connected, huh?
Oh.
Scary stuff. So this kind of leads us to another related topic, those malicious open source software packages.
Oh yeah, we saw a report about that too. Researchers at Reversing Labs found two packages called ethers-providerz and ethers-providerz on the NPM repository, which is a big hub for JavaScript developers.
Okay, so those names sound kind of familiar.
They do, right. That's the point. They're mimicking the legitimate and very popular Ethers package, which is a crucial library for developers working with the Ethereum blockchain.
So they're trying to trick developers into downloading these fake packages.
Exactly. And these packages weren't actually the malware themselves, they were downloaders. So if a developer installed one of these fake packages, it would then update the legitimate ethers package, but secretly replace a key file with a malicious program that would create something called a reverse
A
shell.
reverse shell. What is that exactly?
Well, normally when a hacker wants to attack your computer, their computer reaches out to yours, right? But a reverse shell flips that. It forces your computer to initiate a connection back to the attacker's machine.
So it's like calling the hacker and inviting them in.
Pretty much, yeah. And this lets the attacker run commands on your computer, steal your data, or install even more malware. And it can often bypass firewalls because the connection looks like it's coming from inside your network.
That's so sneaky.
It is, yeah. Reversing Labs even called it a highly sophisticated technique. And the likely target here, they think, is blockchain developers, those working on Ethereum. The goal is to steal their cryptocurrency.
So the lesson here is be very careful what you download, even from seemingly trustworthy sources. Double-check the names, double-check the publishers. It could save you a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. Vigilance is key, always. Let's talk about ransomware again for a minute. There are reports about these new and sneaky ways that attackers are trying to get around security defenses.
Oh, like what? What are they doing now?
Well, the Medusa ransomware group, they've been using this technique called bring your own vulnerable driver attacks, or BYOD.
BO80. That sounds kind of harmless, like bringing your own lunch to work.
I know, right? But it's not harmless at all. So here's how it works. The attackers drop this small program on your computer, and this program then installs two things. One is a legitimate but outdated and vulnerable software driver, and the other is the ransomware itself.
Okay, so they're using a legitimate piece of software, but one that has known security flaws.
Exactly. And the specific driver they've been using is called smule.tosis. And it's designed to look like a legitimate driver from CrowdStrike Falcon, which is a popular security product. It even had a digital signature, although it's been revoked now. It was from a Chinese company called Abyssworker.
So they're trying to make it look like a trustworthy file.
Yep, to fool the operating system. By loading this vulnerable driver, they can exploit its weaknesses to disable or bypass the security software that's supposed to be protecting you. This tactic of using outdated drivers for malicious purposes isn't new, but it's definitely gaining traction.
So it's like using an old rusty key to open a high-tech lock.
That's a good way to put it. Medusa itself, they're becoming a major player in the ransomware world. They're right up there with groups like Lockbit and Ransom Hub. The U.S. government even issued a warning about them in March.
Really? So they're that dangerous?
They are. They had already hit over 300 victims across a bunch of critical infrastructure sectors by February. We're talking healthcare, education, legal, insurance, technology, manufacturing. The FBI, CISA, and MSISAC have all issued warnings about them.
Okay, so Medusa's one to watch out for sure. And it seems like there are always new ransomware gangs popping up, too.
You're right. There's this new one called Van Helsing that was just discovered by Check Point. It's pretty worrying because it can encrypt all sorts of systems, including Windows, Linux, VMware, and ESXi servers. And those ESXi servers, they're often used for really critical stuff.
So this Van Helsing ransomware could cause some serious disruption.
It could, yeah. And it's operating as a RIOS, just like Medusa. And get this, they just started operating on March 7th of this year, so they're brand new. But they've already hit 3 organizations, demanding $500,000 in cryptocurrency from each of them.
Wow, so they're not wasting any time. They're hitting the ground running.
They are. And their affiliate program is kind of interesting, too. New affiliates have to pay a $5,000 entry fee, but established actors don't have to pay anything. And the revenue split heavily favors the affiliates. They get to keep 80% of any ransom payments they collect.
So they're trying to attract both newbies and experienced hackers.
Seems that way, yeah. And there's some evidence that suggests they might be Russian. They specifically say they won't target any organizations in Russia or the Commonwealth of Independent States.
Interesting. So maybe there's a geopolitical element to this ransomware, too.
Possibly. The researchers at Check Point, they actually compared Van Helsing to North Korea's involvement in cybercrime. They think that ransomware could become more and more linked to these international power struggles.
So it's not just about the money anymore. It's about something bigger.
Maybe, yeah. It's something to think about.
It is. Okay, so on a more positive note, we did see some good news about international cooperation in fighting cybercrime.
Yeah, Interpol just wrapped up this big operation called Operation Red Card, which was a 3-month crackdown on cybercrime across 7 countries in Africa.
Okay, and how did that go?
Pretty well, actually. They arrested over 300 people and seized almost 2,000 electronic devices. They even recovered around $100,000 in stolen funds.
That's a pretty big win. What kind of cybercrime were they targeting?
All sorts. Mobile banking scams, investment fraud, those online casino scams, SIM-box fraud, smishing, malware-based phone hacking, impersonation scams, even money laundering through cryptocurrency. They were pretty busy.
Sounds like it. So it was a pretty broad effort then.
It was, yeah. And cybersecurity companies played a big role too. Group IB, Trend Micro, Kaspersky, they all provided threat intelligence, including analysis of this Android malware that was targeting people in Africa.
So it was a real team effort.
It was. And get this, Nigerian authorities found out that some of the people working in these scam centers might actually be victims of human trafficking. It's a reminder that this whole cybercrime world is pretty complex.
It's a reminder that there are real people behind all these attacks, and some of them aren't even doing it willingly.
That's right. And they also seized a bunch of assets, vehicles, houses, land, devices. Not sure if it was all bought with stolen money, but it's still a significant blow to these criminal operations.
Definitely. It sends a message. It shows that these criminals aren't invincible.
Exactly. Neil Jetton, he's the director of the Cybercrime Directorate at Interpol. He said that Operation Red Card really shows the power of international cooperation. It shows that these cybercriminals aren't beyond the reach of the law, no matter where they are.
Okay, that's good to hear. It's not all doom and gloom.
No, it's not. There are people fighting the good fight. Speaking of fighting the good fight, we saw some interesting developments in the world of bug bounty programs.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. OpenAI increased their bug bounty rewards, right?
They did, yeah. Up to $100,000 for finding high-impact vulnerabilities. They're also expanding their cybersecurity grant program.
So they're really trying to get security researchers on their side, huh?
Makes sense, right? Especially now that they're developing all these new AI agents and tools, they want to make sure their systems are secure.
Yeah, before something bad happens.
Right. Their cybersecurity grant program has already funded 28 research initiatives since 2023. They're looking at things like building autonomous defense systems, preventing prompt injection attacks against AI models, and developing secure methods for generating code. They're really trying to get ahead of the curve here.
Sounds like it. And Google also bumped up their bug bounty rewards last year.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like finding those really serious bugs is getting harder and harder.
It is. These companies are getting better at securing their systems, which is good, but it also means that finding the remaining vulnerabilities requires more skill and effort.
So the researchers need more incentive to keep hunting for those bugs.
Exactly. And this whole bug bounty trend really highlights how important collaboration is between security researchers and software developers. As AI models become more complex and the potential for new vulnerabilities grows, these programs offer a way to tap into external expertise to find and fix those flaws before the bad guys can exploit them.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
Pretty much, yeah. Oh, and one last thing before we wrap up. We saw a report about the return of a known threat actor, Famous Sparrow.
Weren't they supposed to be gone? Like retired or something?
That's what everyone thought, yeah. But researchers at ESET found new versions of their Sparrow Door malware during an investigation they did for a U.S. financial trade group. And these new versions are pretty advanced. They've clearly been putting in work to improve their tools.
So they've been busy upgrading their malware while everyone thought they were gone.
Seems that way, yeah. And we thought they hadn't been active since 2022. But DSET actually found evidence of activity between 2022 and 2024. They hit a government institution in Honduras and a research institute in Mexico right before they hit this U.S. target in July of 2024.
So they were just laying low, quietly building up their capabilities.
Could be, yeah. And even though these new versions are more sophisticated, they still have some similarities to their older malware, which is how the researchers figured out it was Famous Sparrow.
So they couldn't completely hide their tracks?
No, they couldn't. And we don't know exactly how they got into the U.S. target, but we do know that the company was using outdated versions of Windows Server and Microsoft Exchange, both of which have known vulnerabilities.
So they probably exploited one of those vulnerabilities.
Most likely, yeah. And once they were in, they used some pretty standard tactics like deploying a web shell on an ICE server and using other tools like Shadowpad to run commands, log keystrokes, steal files, take screenshots. It's a good reminder that even threat actors who seem to have disappeared can come back with new and improved tools.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. What are the big takeaways, the things that people should really remember?
Well, I think the main thing is that the cybersecurity landscape is constantly changing and evolving. The attacks are getting more sophisticated and more frequent, and AI is playing a bigger role on both sides, both the attackers and the defenders.
And ransomware is still a huge problem, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
No, it's not. And nation-state actors are still actively engaged in espionage, trying to steal sensitive information and gain a strategic advantage.
And we all need to be more aware of the risks associated with the software supply chain and open source software. One little vulnerability can have huge consequences.
Absolutely. Staying informed about these trends is crucial, and that's what we're here to help you do.
Right, and on that note, here's something to think about. Given all these threats and the growing role of AI, what practical steps can you take, both at work and at home, to improve your security? Are there any specific actions you can take right now based on what we've talked about today? Think about it.
It's a journey, not a destination, right? We all need to keep learning and adapting to stay ahead of the bad guys.
Very true. Well, thanks for joining us for this week's deep dive on calm coding. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to tune in.
Until then, stay safe online, everyone.
And stay vigilant.